Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome in to the Buddhist Biohacker. We are here for yet another episode, and believe it or not, we are just a few days away from our 100th episode of Buddhist Biohacker, which is so amazing. So I will be sending out some information very soon about how we're going to celebrate this 100th episode. I'm really, really excited about it. And I'll be joined on that 100th episode with Julie Hoyle, who we all love and know. So welcome in. And here we are today. And I'm really joyful about our guest today, Claudette Dean. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lisa. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, and then thank you for all the work you're doing. It's so amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm so happy to have you. Your art is really incredible, and it caught my eye way back at the beginning of the year here, really seeing what you did, and just it was like, oh, like this. There's an energy to this art that I really, really liked. And so I'm so happy to be connected with you. And thank you to Julie Hoyle who connected us for sure.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, another connection.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to start out with you just sharing a little bit about what you do and who you are with everybody who is joining us right now.
Okay. Well, I've been working as a visual artist since the mid-1990s, and I've also done some writing, and I published a book 2 years ago called Smelling Roses, A Tale of Connection and Transformation. And that's basically what I do. There's a lot of stories in the journey that took me through all of that, but and of course, my work is spiritually based. I have to put that in. It's always been about that for me. Yeah, that with a capital H.
What was it that got you started? Like, were you always creative? Like, what started your journey into, being an artist?
Right. That is a very interesting, and I think it's maybe the most interesting part of my story is that I was never one that thought I would be an artist. I always admired artists and all of that, but, was probably maybe the last thing I thought I would ever be. Looking back now on myself as a child, I can see that artistic things were the things I enjoyed the most. I hated sports. I loved my coloring book or paper dolls or plasticine back then and all of that. But I grew up in a time where really creativity wasn't that pushed at home or at school, in a very French Canadian Catholic family and school system. And so it was just a little bit of that, but I've always had, as I might say, a foot in another place. I was always, although I didn't know what that was at the time. And so I went through life basically, I got a degree in French language and literature because not with any purpose in mind, just because it's what I enjoyed and was interested in. And then I worked in Toronto for a real estate company, and then I worked in Montreal for an engineering company, never really using my degree or my creativity. And then when I moved to the Bahamas to get married, I met my husband here, and we had a long distance romance. I came to get married. And when I got on the island, it's a small island, they were short of French teachers. And they heard I had a degree in French, although I'd never been in a classroom in my life. And so I taught French for 3.5 years, again, thrown into a classroom. I'd never been in a classroom. I took over the whole French department of one of the high schools here when their French teacher went home at Easter to Jamaica and didn't come back.
Oh, gosh. I was talking about being thrown in.
So in a new country, in front of a classroom, teaching French. Yeah, so that was one of the first times I got thrown into the deep end and had to swim. And then my husband had the idea we should open some drugstores in town that were, discount drugstore, because that kind of thing was so expensive at the time. And so I said, sure, why not? Didn't have a clue how to run a business, but I ran 2 drugstores and did that for 11 years. and I did everything. So, and it was a success, a success. But in the meantime, I was kind of getting lost. I was going through the motion. I was a mother, a wife. I did what I had to do at work, but I was kind of feeling like I was disappearing. Like, where's Claudette? So it was at a time in my life, really, I guess many would refer to as midlife crisis, where women are. I was 37, 38, and saying, okay, well, who am I, and what is all of this about? And I don't know where, but a little tugging at my midsection started about, I need to be creative. And so I said, well, I started painting on T-shirts, and it was, just small things. And then I watched the Today Show one morning, and they were showing a book called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. And it kind of stuck with me, that anybody could learn to draw and all of that. And we took a trip to Miami a little while later. And then I saw this book in the bookshop, so I picked it up. And when we got back home, my husband went out to drop something. I don't know what. And I opened the book and I just started devouring it. It was like I had found something, that I've been searching for. And I did the book, and then I ended up taking a couple of private lessons, maybe 5, and then just been working on my own in the studio. That's basically how I started with the art again. And, it's such a great community here. And I had a friend of mine who was kind of in the same spot, that we came along and worked together, and was quite quite good success with it all after it started rolling. I'd say, maybe that first big show was in 99, and it was a total success, and had a lot of success over, all the years, and I guess it was maybe 12 years in that I had a show that brought me back to the beginning of why I was painting, which was really a spiritual journey for me. Like when I first started painting, everything that came out of me had the sun, the moon, the stars, everything magical and mystical. It was like everything spilled out of me that was inside of me, was totally different from anything around here. And when I look at some of those paintings now, I have to smile because it was so different, and some people appreciated it, but some, I'm sure didn't. And then it evolved, and really, and then I kind of lost my way a bit, because then it became more about the painting, less about that connection and all of that. And it was still good, mind you, but it became more personal maybe than spiritual. Mm-hmm. Then I reached the point, I guess around 2000 and when was that? 7 maybe. I was invited to do a show in my hometown, which of Blind River, where I'm from. I'm Canadian originally. On the 100th anniversary. So I did a one-woman show there, and I came back and I regrouped, and a friend of mine asked me the question, well, why do you paint? And that kind of brought me right back to, why I paint. And then I created my, what might be called my awakening show, which is the show Lumière, which I talk about quite a bit. And so that was, and then as far as do you want me to continue as far as the writing goes?
Yeah, well, I want to stop you there and ask, when you talk about, the spirituality, I kind of want to go into that deeper when you talk about, how does the spirituality interweave with your art? When you talk about the sun and the moon and the stars and the mysticism, like in looking back at your journey, like what can you take from it spiritually, and maybe share 1 or 2 of the spiritual experiences you've had through your art?
Wow. Well, my art really has been my vehicle to awakening. To me, the most important thing when I was creating was that it just be as intuitive as possible. It wasn't always, but that's when I had the greatest pleasure from it, that it started somewhere really small. And then, as that saying goes, you get in that zone and it's like something happens that's magic. And comments again, from that first big show, people felt that, they talked about the sublime. Somebody said, I see so many prayers in your work. It wasn't something I was intentionally doing, but it was spilling out of me because I was making that connection to source as I was painting. And so it had that energy. It was nothing, I was simply the channel that it came through and spilled out on the canvas, and people react to it, and they still do. Those are the types of comments I get about my work. And I'm so humbled by it, because I always say it's not me. It's, the less of me that's in there, the better. That's how I look at it. And yeah, the Lumiere show, there's a funny story about that, because that's actually where I met Julie. She brought her class up to view the show, and I can still see her, and she's looking around and she's looking at me. And I've had these paintings of women on lotus flowers or coming out of lotus flowers. And she said to me, are you aware that, she was often represented sitting on lotus flowers? And I looked at her. I never heard of Shiva. I didn't know anything about that. I just loved that visual. I loved the idea of the lotus growing out of the mud and to the light and all of that. But the whole, and so she, that was my introduction to Julie. And I think I mentioned this to you before. And then later I was up there every day during the day. And this gentleman came in one afternoon, and he just walked in and by himself. He looked all around carefully, and then he said, thank you. And he left. And that was Tony. She had sent her husband, Tony, there. She said, you have to go see Claudette's Lumiere show, because it's her awakening, or Shaktipat, as she said, so. And then later I connected with Julie via another friend of mine. And, then she started talking to me about that and all of that. And yeah, then everything fell into place after that. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so
yeah, it's all spiritually based. If it's not that, it doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, what we were talking about off the air was, isn't it channeling? Like truly, aren't you pulling in this incredible energy of spirit when you're painting?
It's exactly what it is. You're channeling source at the best of it. Even if, I think all artists do it, and it all comes out differently. But I know that it was a longing for me. It was a spiritual longing for me that I was aware of, and so I know that that's what was happening. Definitely, I mean, some paintings they're not always like that, and they're still great, but they don't have that special energy, or they don't give you that same kind of joy when you're painting them that those that come out, and it's like magic, right? Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and then the poetry, what happened with the poetry, it was during my second one-woman show called Inner Sanctum. And then, you see, I was more aware of the whole spiritual thing. And I think it kind of, as you were talking about with Julie today, those glitches, once you realize, then you start thinking, oh, it needs to be that way. So it kind of interfered a little bit with the painting, in that I was thinking more about that, so that show was full of lotus flowers again, but they had depictions of myself, and it showed that there wasn't quite the total connection between that lotus and the outside life, of me. And but what happened in that show is that I got a prompt to write poetry to go along with the paintings. And I had never written any poetry, serious poetry. And so I said, okay, well, I'll sit down. The moon has always been a great inspiration. I had this big painting in my studio of the different phases of the moon. I said, well, let me start with the moon. And then I wrote this poem. I thought, oh, it's not too bad. It was like, again, it was channeled. Obviously, it was, coming through. It took a while to work. And then I did a whole series of poems, which were really love poems to the divine. And so in that show, I displayed the paintings, and I had that poetry playing during the exhibition. And to me, those poems were really the strength of that show, because that was that pure, again, channeling, that happened in this new medium that was new to me. So I got that same joy again through writing that poetry. And then writing the book was kind of similar. I've been on this journey trying to figure out, what's next. And so I thought, well, if you want something different to happen, you need to change up the energy. So a friend of mine invited me to a writer's club. She said, why don't you join? It's on Wednesday night. We write for 15 minutes and we share. And, okay, I'll do it. So joined the writer's club. And it was maybe 5 or 6 meetings in, somebody gave a prompt, and it was, Peter yanked open the door and all of the color drained from his face. And you kind of had to write the story from that and and share it. So I wrote this little story, and I shared it the next meeting, and everybody liked it. And I thought, you know what, let me just continue with this story. And over a period of 2 years, this whole story spilled out of me again. I'd never written before. So I just let the story spill out the first year. And then the second year I went over filling it in and making it proper and all of that. And that's how Smelling Roses happened.
Oh my gosh. Well, share a little bit about what Smelling Roses is about, because it's really beautiful and profound, and I just love it. So I want to share a little bit about it for everybody listening and watching.
Well, there is a channeling element in it. There seemed to be a theme there. It's about an 11-year-old boy who's an identical twin. And he, at the age of 11, he begins speaking in this voice that nobody knows what it is and saying these profound things. And it takes place in the 1950s, where they were kind of psychiatry obsessed. And he's in this very Catholic family, and the priest advises they should have him tested psychologically to see what's happening with him. And he ends up being institutionalized, and he goes through, this whole thing. And so there's a lot of, there's addiction, there's abuse, there's mental illness in it, but then it's all interwoven with healing and connection and transformation. And all throughout the book, there's these channel messages from this entity called Magnus. And also there's a lot of other, like there's lucid dreams, a lot of serendipities that occur. So, playing with the idea of unseen forces that play in everyday life. And so it was like, I had no idea what it would be like, what it would be about, but there it was. Yeah.
Wow. How did writing about that impact your own view of your own journey as a spiritual being?
Yeah, it was, again, it amazed me. Again, the fact that I wrote a whole book, when it came and I held it, I thought, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. I said, I actually wrote that, and it just confirmed that connection, to source, that when you open that channel, it's and you're open to it, and you're coming from a very pure and open heart, things happen. You have to trust it. And so many things have happened that I trust it, and I just go with it. And of course, it wasn't always easy, but I had such fun, because every time I wrote a chapter, it was like, wow, I didn't know that was going to happen. It was, it was a revelation to me, and neat things happen. It's not going to win the Pulitzer Prize, but it's a really good and easy read, and people, who are not really into, that spiritual stuff or open to it as much, have enjoyed it, because there's real people in the book, and real things happening, along with opening that idea that, there are other forces at play, that if you pay attention, they will lead you, and then there's the channeling part, and then it goes into the 60s, and really a lot of those same issues that were, in the 60s with the equality and, human rights and on that are happening today. So the book, is relevant today because of that, as
Yeah.
well. Yeah. So it was totally fun and exhilarating. Yeah. And
Um,
I left room for a sequel. I haven't started it yet, but I've left some bits and pieces for a sequel.
that is so awesome. And what a beautiful thing. Like you just say yes to all of this energy coming forward and
I've
just
been good at that. Yeah, I've been good at whatever drops in my lap. I'll take the step and I'll do the work. Because I've been on this journey. Whether consciously or it's conscious now, but whatever that longing was that got me to start painting, it led me to the knowledge that it has been a spiritual journey, and now I'm aware. And so, looking back, I've had so much, I've been so fortunate, and had such an amazing life so far. And you get signs, and the more you see them, the more you get them. And dreams, I've had some amazing dreams that have come just in the nick of time to, reassure me or encourage me, or, friends, talk about connections. I've been so fortunate that way, meeting one person who introduces me to the next person that has just kept me going, and has my journey been opening like a flower because of it. And you're my latest connection, thanks to Julie.
oh, I love it. Well, and obviously, for everybody out there, I was telling Claudette I had a dream about her last night, and so I think there's so much more to come for sure.
Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah,
Yeah,
really. Yeah.
it really is. And I'm just so curious, about when you were writing about all this channeling, did you do any research when you were writing about it, or was it really just came through? I'm just curious.
The only research I did was, it was Siri that I asked, because it's like I had the girl tape recording him, and tape recorders weren't around in the 60s, believe it or not. You might have thought so. And so I had to say, well, when, so I had to take that all out and have her ticking dictation while he had these channeling messages. And when it's a 60s soundtrack, so there's different music playing. So I had to make sure that song came out of that year. So that's the kind of research I did. But as far as channeling, you know, no, because I've done so much reading, and I've been on this spiritual journey before I started painting. I've been on. See, when did that start? Hmm. Very first conscious beginning of it might have been 1987, maybe. So I had a lot of knowledge that I had accumulated. I did the Course in Miracles and stuff like that, So definitely had a lot of stuff stored in my mind about that kind of thing. So I guess it all helped in putting, when he did these channel messages. And I know that it was a big thing to actually put those in there. It is fiction, but yeah. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
So amazing.
To hear one of the quotes from Magnus.
Yes, let's do it. I want to hear it.
Wow.
Beautiful. And while you're pulling that out, I'm just going to invite all of you guys. We have such a great audience right now. You guys are welcome to throw out any of your questions for Claudette, or any comments or shares in the comments box. Don't forget. So, all right, I want to hear some of these messages.
Well, I'll read one that is kind of like the main message, and this happens when Charles, who is now older, this is the first time that he becomes consciously aware of Magnus, because when he's been channeling, he hasn't been aware, so it's been difficult for him. So this is now when he first realizes that what's happening to him, and who this entity is. And it says, after stepping into the hot water, Charles slid down to rest his head on the neck cushion, and was startled to hear a voice inside his head. We are pleased, dear one. You are safe, and you can rest in the certainty that your family is being held in light and love. We are known as Magnus. Charles remained calm. Magnus, he said out loud, pleased to finally meet you. He wanted to ask a question but was hesitant. Then he heard Magnus again. We would be pleased to answer your question. Oh, thank you. I was just wondering, I know I have a gift, but it's been really hard so far. Is it always going to be this way? We are amused, for this is the definitive question. Be not concerned if you do not fully comprehend the response we're about to give you. Further life experience and contemplation will be required for complete understanding. Intrigued, Charles paid close attention. You will know joy, but not without sadness, nor pleasure without pain. Seek awareness through the heart, and you will come to understand it is from the dream of duality that you awaken to oneness. Herein lies the paradox of life. All is in divine order, and so it is. So that was his main message.
So it is. My God.
Yeah.
My whole, like, I have just every cell in my body is just lighting up from that. So obviously, you're channeling these beings in your writing, right?
That's the question, right? Yeah, that was a question. You always wonder, but some of the things came out pretty nicely, I have to say. I have to say, yeah. So it's interesting. Mm-hmm.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, you're. Oh my gosh, you have so much to share. I feel still to come. I mean, so much to share. Yeah. Your art is so profound. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, if any of you guys listening has a chance, go to Claudette's website. It's going across the screen right now. It's in the show notes, but it's ClaudetteDean.com, and just look at her art. I mean, it's really beautiful. I mean, it really is, because it's just so full of Shakti. I mean, really.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, and there's a link also to to order my book if anybody's interested in smelling roses. Yeah, and it's a great Christmas story too, by the way, because it starts at Christmas and ends at Christmas, which wasn't. I guess I did write it. When was that? I guess it was November, so it might have had something to do with it. So it's mm-hmm.
That's so awesome. Yeah. So I want to ask you, there are creative people watching this or watching the replay, watching live, it doesn't matter, listening on audio, whatever they're doing, they're hearing you talk and they're like, gosh, it sounds so simple, but I'm scared. Or they've done the work and they have, the art or the film or the photography or the creative writing or whatever it is, and they just are afraid to say yes. They're afraid to take that step. They're afraid to do those things. And so my question for you is, what's your message for them? What's your advice? Because you've just said yes and just done these things. So what would you say to the creative people out there who are afraid of taking that step?
Well, I would say just that. Say yes. Just take the step and start and trust. I'm here to tell you, because I have a history behind me, that it happens. It's for real. Just trust that and open up. Try to get out of your head, out of the way, and just start somewhere and let it happen. And trust the process. Trust the process. And it's different, I think, for everybody. Obviously, what comes out. I mean, abstract work, and because it's not just about the image. It's more about the energy that the work gives off. You know what I mean? And I had to kind of learn that myself, although my images are spiritually based, but they do have that energy. And sometimes you might paint like when I did the second show painting lotuses, they were more, they're beautiful images and they're spiritual, but they might have had less of that energy because I was consciously trying to do it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It was that, what you were talking about, those glitches. Once it's something, you get like, yeah. So, but then the poetry happened that, again, brought me back to, yes, just let it happen, let it flow. So the most important thing is don't wait for some kind of a light bulb to go out or some sign. You just have to start and then open up and be patient. be patient and do the work. Nothing is going to land in your lap. You have to do the work, no matter how enlightened you are, you need to take those steps and do the work. Right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's the theme of the week. Do the work.
Do the work. Yeah. Believe me, I painted so much. And that's where I wanted to be. I wanted to live in my studio, because all that magic is happening in there. I couldn't wait to get in there, but I worked. I painted a lot. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's something, when you are in the flow, that spiritual flow, whether it's writing or painting, or for me, I even find it in my yoga practice, like you just keep going. It's like you can't, that's where, like you said, you want to live in your studio. It's like you just don't want to leave that energy because you're in this really beautiful flow and groove.
You're totally connected, which we always are connected, but when you feel it that much, and you have evidence of it, it's the best natural high, right? Who needs anything else when you have that? It's like, that's what being in the zone is. It happens to runners. I mean, it's all meditation, isn't it? When you're running, when you're sewing, whatever you're doing that you love and you're just in the flow, like you say, that's a total meditation because you're in the heart.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not a great heart.
Yeah.
So my question for you, one of the things that's really important is the refinement of our spiritual practices. And to me, that's even the creative piece, right? You want to refine your gifts and your talents and your tools and all the things you're doing. And so what does your spiritual practice, what is your creative practice? Like what is it that you do to stay in that flow or to bring that flow in? Like, what are your practices?
Well, you know what? I'm not very disciplined with that. It's just going, if I might read something and then it triggers an image. So I'll my practice was really, or is, starting on the sketchbook. So it starts with a little idea. So I'll start a little sketch and see if some kind of image comes out of that, right? And then I go onto the canvas, and then the magic happens once I start, and the paint happen, the colors happen, and then happy accidents happen, and that's how things. Then the more you're there, and the more things happen, the more it's like a flower opening up, and then you're totally connected, right? Same with writing or writing a poem. Starting with a phrase, I could read you one of the poems. Let's see.
Yeah, let's do it.
Do you want one that was one from that show or a later one?
Oh gosh, you pick. Let's do one of each. Why don't you read one from that show first?
Okay. This is a nice one because people often ask if my art is influenced by my surroundings. I live in the Bahamas, as you know. And because you can tell by the colors and, the colors mainly, and just the vibe. And so this poem kind of reflects that as well, that it was written in the Bahamas, but it's very spiritual. And this was written in 2010, and it was part of my Inner Sanctum show, I believe. No, it wasn't. It was afterwards. But anyway, it's called Love Was There Everywhere. The crescent gypsy was sprinkling moon dust along the Milky Way, while clean palms swayed to a balmy breeze wafting in off a twinkling azure sea. Gentle waves arrived on shore one by one as moonlit crabs danced sideways across the warm pink sand. All were there to witness and to welcome. I lay beneath the starry blanket of exquisite endlessness, my heart open, vulnerable yet unafraid, quivered with anticipation. For love was there everywhere.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. That's beautiful. Oh my gosh, read another one, please.
Okay, let me see. I'm in love with the moon, so the moon is often in my paintings. Okay, well, this one, maybe three, because this one is also very Bahamian. It's called Bohemian Sunday. And that this one was written in 2015. It says, Bohemian Sunday, I kneel at the altar of creation and commune with nature. Tobacco dove sings a hymn of praise. Oleander and frangipani purify the air. Perched upon hibiscus, butterfly preaches of transformation. Sun lays hands upon me as baptism by turquoise and salt cleanses and heals. I kneel at the altar of creation and whisper prayers of gratitude. So nature is important. And then there's this one is sometimes. Sometimes when the moon is full, I hear the sea deep inside of me. It murmurs of the ebb and flow of life, of change, of moving on, of footprints left upon the sands of here today and gone too soon. Sometimes when the moon is full, I feel the sea deep inside of me. It swells my chest, it fills my heart, then overflows all down my cheeks in salty drops that leave a trail of joy, of pain, of loss and gain. Sometimes when the moon is full, I know that she is a part of me. Secrets shared on nights like these with those who are awake are etched in light and the script of stars and spoken in the tongue of the sea.
Claudette, your writing's as beautiful as your art.
Thank you. I find there's an extra special power in words, if you get it just right. Yeah. I mean, the images it's fun and beautiful, but there's something about when these words come out, it's like, oof, yeah. Because it's more direct, I think, right? For people as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, don't you find there's a time, all the poetry that I've written, even since I was like a young kid, I would go out in nature.
Yeah.
So you're talking about nature is so important, but I also think, isn't there something the energy of when it lands? It's like when the poetry comes through, it's so obvious it's coming from this higher God source rather than yourself, and that power just kind of pours through the words, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I at the beginning I had to work on it, and often I'd be in the gym on the elliptical going over the poem, and I'm thinking, and then when it lands and it's perfectly right, it like it's not speaking to you anymore, like a painting, it's still speaking to you. You still have work to do on it, and the same with the poems. Like there's just something about yes, that's it, and you've captured it. Yeah, so I'm just so humbled and grateful that that happens. Yeah. But I haven't done a whole lot creatively except for redoing our home because our island was hit by Hurricane Dorian last it's been almost like a little over a year. So our whole home downstairs was destroyed. So this year, that's what I've been busy doing, and my husband and I restoring the home and our island, and then COVID-19 hit. And so I've been really, in contemplation a lot about, okay, what is next, as far as what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, it's a peculiar year, isn't it, Claudette? I mean, it's peculiar in that it's very busy. And at the same time, it's not busy at all.
Exactly.
There's this real, I was thinking about this earlier today. It feels like this is the, holding before, there's this letting go.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of in a gestation, right? Period or something. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it feels like things are shifting, and it's not that we're all going to go in a different direction in 2021. As much as it feels like the direction we've all been going, expands in a way we just never really saw before. I'm always thinking to myself, what is the quantum leap? What is the radical shift? When an idea lands or something comes forward, it's like, okay, this platform, even Buddhist Biohacker, how do we take this and move it forward at a quantum level? You know,
Right.
like what is
Yeah.
that going to look like next year?
Right.
And do you find with your whether it's writing or art or whatever, do you feel like it kind of builds up and then it's like you got to get it out of you? I have this feeling like I just had that recently with the documentary, but like whenever I have a creative project, it's kind of like you were talking about being on the elliptical, and I think you kind of just feel this build until it's like, okay, I have to get this out. Like I
Yeah.
have to do this because it's
Yeah.
coming.
It's like a tugging, I call it, right? To me,
Oh,
it's in the midsection. It's like a tugging in the midsection that you really can't ignore. And then you have to kind of zoom in on it and say, okay, let me just take a step and let it grow, for sure. But I think there are a lot of different um, ways that things get advanced in different people. And, you're definitely, I think, one of those people that bring other people together and create a big movement, and there are some people that just doing their thing, being part of the movement. So there's all kinds of different roles, and I think you have a big one. You have a lot on your shoulder.
you're so sweet.
And you're so willing, and I know you're not afraid of change. It's like I'm the opposite. I kind of like, change is like, and that's all that's ever happened in my life was change. So it's like I kind of learned to go with it too and take a step. But yeah, so I commend you, and I know there are a lot like you as well are doing similar kind of platforms to lead, to a better place for all of us and the world, right?
Right.
Hmm.
Well, we're all mirrors for each other, right? And so, what you see in me is really in you. And that's a lot
Yeah,
of what we're doing. You take these action steps, you do it. You do
yeah,
it and it hits.
different way, yeah, different
Yeah.
journey, but same thing. It's true, and yeah, I like to say we're all just here bouncing off one another and learning from one another, right? We're all
Mhm.
headed the same way, right? So,
Yeah.
so
I
you
think
can only do what you can do, right?
yeah. Oh, it's
Yeah.
true. And I
Hmm.
think of that movie Parenthood with Steve Martin, such an old movie now.
Yeah.
There was a scene where the little grandmother at the end said, some people, she said, life's a roller coaster. And she said, when you go up over that first hill and you go down, she goes, there's two kinds of people. There's the kinds of people who throw their arms up and are like, yeah, we're going. And then there's
Right.
the people who don't want to look or are grabbing on or are really scared. And she said, it's up to you to
Yeah.
choose which person you want to be. And I think that, your art and your book and all of the things you're doing is such a reflection of just throwing your arms up and going with
Yeah.
who you're being called. And I would love to hear a story from you about something you want to share about one of those times you did ride that ride, or one of those times you did take an action step that really went someplace you weren't expecting, or I'm sure you've got stories. So
Well, all of that, taking the step into art, but when I didn't, I thought it was the last thing I'd be able to do. I mean, I didn't even know how to put paint on the brush. It was like that, that kind of thing, and or writing the poetry. I thought, well, I'll give it a try, the moon, and I wrote a poem called Mystical Madam, so I with the book, I wrote that little story, and I said, well, I might as well just continue with it, So they've all been that kind of thing where I've just gone with it and trusted it, and reaped the joy from it, because again, that connection, I've always had that longing for one step in that other realm, and wanting to really show people another reality like that, and escape into it myself, and I do know that it's not about being over there and then coming back here. It's about bringing that here and living it wholly and in this life and being human, but being aware of your divinity, moving according to your divinity in the physical realm, and recognizing that we're all a part of that divinity, and then when you can see things like that, I mean, how can you be judgmental, or right? It's all perception, and we all come with a little backpack of stuff that affects our vision. It's what we see everything through, and we act out of compulsion a lot. And when you become conscious and you can say, whoa, I know what that is, let me do it this way instead, you start breaking that. It's karma, really. You start breaking those chains and opening up to really seeing, and really seeing people, or who they are, which is really another version of you. That's all it is. We're all mirrors, like you say, and learning. Our most difficult people around us are our greatest teachers. If you look at them that way, everything changes, because then it becomes kind of like a classroom rather than a battle. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it's it's once you start opening up and seeing and being awake to all of that, it's just, it changes everything. And that's what you want for everybody, because if it happens for everybody, how can the world not change, And it seems like such a big task, but it starts with one person at a time, right?
Yeah.
So if you can put something out there that might open up something in somebody, what more can you ask for? Somebody stand in front of painting and all of a sudden they start crying and they don't know why. It's like, who needs money for that painting? That is such a reward, that's everything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we all have our gifts to give in different ways that can reap those same joyous results. We just have to discover them. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, your energy, you're so inspiring.
Oh, thank you.
I feel my own energy opening up talking to you and feeling like the colors and the lights and the energy like coming into my space. I mean, what a gift for all.
Wow, well, that means so much. And so, like I say, I'm so humbled to hear that. Yeah, because it's yeah, it's a beautiful thing, and I feel your energy, and I'm in such awe of you, because doing everything, organizing, and it seems like such a big task, where I can just pick up my pen or my paintbrush and it's me. I don't have to deal with anybody, and it's just me and the source, that sounds like such an easy job compared to yours.
Oh gosh, it's not. Your easefulness, right? And planning and logistics happens to be my paintbrush. You know what I mean?
I guess. Yeah.
Like,
everything.
We all have
your gift. Those are your gifts. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I'm definitely creative and I love to paint and color and do things, but I could never, I don't know, I won't say never, but I'm in awe of your own talents and gifts, put it that way. So it's so cool as though the thing that's so beautiful about what you're saying and what I feel too is it doesn't really matter how many hours I work any more than it matters how many hours you work. What matters is what we're able to do to impact the planet and the people on the planet, to awaken someone, to be able to touch someone, to inspire someone, to hold space for someone who's struggling, like that's what both of us are doing in our own mediums, and that's really what it's about. And I never thought I would be making film or doing this show, but
your documentary, by the way, I watched that part. Oh my God, I was transfixed.
Yeah, I was watching it like 1,000 times, and I can't even stop watching it because the stories, the shots. And so just like you with art, where it's like, well, you didn't even quite know how to paint. Like I didn't know what I was doing either. But it's like, here I am, like producing video happens to be something I'm really good at,
Really good. And the way you put it, the story starting and another one's stopping and starting, I thought was really the documentary, the way you produced it itself is really wonderful. Then the stories, I mean, it's like, wow, there's so many stories out there that, people need to hear them, because then they'll realize that there is that magic happening all the time. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing about awakenings, and the beautiful thing is, and I haven't really announced or put it out there, but I'm going to continue these awakening interviews for however long, because you're right. Everyone has an awakening.
It's true. Or more than one. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what's so important to see and feel is not only does everyone have an awakening or multiple awakenings, but we also all have very different awakenings. It doesn't have to look the way that you think it's supposed to look. It's all based on your own experience and your own opening, just like when you have that paintbrush and you're like, oh, this is it. This is what I'm going to do for my awakening,
Right. So, yeah, I didn't know what was happening, but yeah, it's very personal and no less impactful. It's just everybody's story is different and the same result. It's not less than or more than. It's just different. Yeah, and that can happen to anybody. But you have to be you have to be conscious and. I guess, there's always a longing, I think, in everybody, but it might be stronger in some than others. But I think it's always there. I think we're born with that longing, because we're here to awaken, right? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I'm really drawn to talking about the painting behind you with all that light. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about that painting.
Right. The big one?
Yeah.
Well, the big one, it's called Where the Darkness Meets the Light, and that was from the Lumiere show, and it's me, and it's like I often had that lady curled up like that, and because they're that longing again, for the light, and she doesn't realize it, but right behind her, there's this big light that she's about to awaken to, so and at the bottom of it, there's writing that says, where the darkness meets the light, right? Yeah. And the other one on the other side is interesting because after Dorian, I was pretty traumatized because we were in our home when the storm was raging. We had 10 feet of a raging ocean going through our home downstairs. And we were up here with nowhere to go, like many people here. So it was quite traumatic. And, you don't really know how traumatized you are because you think you feel okay. And so maybe might have been 2 months after Dorian, I said, let me just pick up the paintbrush. And, that song, I just dropped in to see what condition my condition was in. Okay, let me paint something and to see exactly where I'm at because it always reveals. And so that's the other one. I know where I need to move. Yeah, you can see she's still kind of, I call it safe but fragile. Yeah, because she's kind of wrapping herself or letting go of that wrap, and there's little hearts in it and stuff. So that was me, after Dorian. Yeah. Yeah, when she's covered in hearts and stuff. So it's like, let me wrap myself in some love, self-love. Yeah. So it's very personal. What happens is, it starts from a personal place and then it gets translated into a universal message through that process, and so when it comes from that real place, people who've experienced something similar, when they see the painting, it speaks to them, you see, because we all go through similar things, right?
Yeah.
That's what the artist does. It translates that personal into the impersonal, into the universal, right? So, yeah.
Beautiful. Oh, beautiful. Can you believe how fast an hour goes?
It's gone. It's an hour already? Wow. Because I was nervous that we wouldn't have enough to talk about.
Oh, God. I think we could talk for 4 hours.
I think so, yeah.
I agree. I think we'll be doing this again for sure, especially considering my dream. I know we're going to be doing a lot of things.
Yeah. I'm excited to hear more about that.
Yeah, it's just a treat to have you on. And I want to give you some space here at the end to share with everyone how they can connect with you and, just what's accessible and out there for you. Obviously, you have art all over, all sorts of things. So I just wanted to give you some space to share with everyone how they can find your work and your book and all that stuff.
Well, you can go to one spot, which is my website, ClaudetteDean.com, and you can see my work. You can order prints from there. There are a few originals available, and in the gallery shop, and also there's a direct link to both of the books, Smelling Roses, and also for Inner Sanctum, I didn't mention that there is a book that's on Blurb that has the collection of paintings and poems, and that's also, you'll see the link there on my website as well. I'm on Instagram, Claudette _Dean. I don't have a huge online presence because I'm still very much this artist and writer in my little space. But yeah, I guess that's going to happen. So
I was going to say, it's coming now. Get ready.
I guess I got to step into that pool.
Yes, great.
Yeah. So, but my website, yeah, you can read my whole introduction there. It tells my whole story, how I was born in Canada, moved to the Bahamas, etc. So it's all right there at claudettedean.com. And if you do visit, there's a contact. So please let me know, make a comment, because it's always good and encouraging to hear stuff. So, and thank you, Lisa, for having me on. And again, for everything that you do. So grateful.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing all of your wonderful energy with us. I mean, I just feel like I got like a little energy uplift for the day. So thank you for that. Oh yeah, just really amazing. And thank you to everybody who's watching. We've had such a great audience today live, and absolutely all of Claudette's information is here in the show notes for all of you. And we actually are wrapped for the week. So Buddhist Biohacker will be back next week, and we have a really, really big announcement coming up in the next few days as we launch our brand new institute. So look for information on that as well. And just so much love to you, Claudette. Thank you so much for being on the show. Really, it's just been a treat. And thank you to Julie Hoyle when you watch this and listen for connecting us, because I'm
sure. And thank you everyone who tuned in. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, thank you, Lisa.
Yes. Thank you guys. Have a great, great day and great rest of the week and weekend.